there, this is Dr. Pam Perry, and welcome to Speakers Magazine Show, where we bring you the best, the brightest, and the most brilliant speakers across the land. Brilliant Black speakers, too, by the way. So if you are just tuning in, Speakers Magazine is 5 years old. The show just debuted this year, and we really like to feature the speakers that are doing the big things. And none other today, I have Dr. David M. Walker. We are streaming on Amazon Live because his book is on Amazon called The Champion's Mind. And we're also over here on LinkedIn and on YouTube. And of course, it'll be on speakersmagazine.com. But what I want to do is bring up Dr. David M. Walker. How are you? How are you?
Pam,
oh my God.
I am doing well, and I'm just so glad to be on the show tonight.
Oh, I'm glad that this book is out, right? This is one of those things where the champion's mind. And I'm going to give I didn't read a formal bio because they can read that in the show notes.
Okay.
But what I will say is that I know about Dr. David M. Walker, that he has been working on this book for a while. And he is, how do I say it? His name is David. So that's where a lot of this book came from. He'll tell you a story about how his grandmother really said his name shall be David. And David is more than a giant killer.
That's right.
And this particular David M. Walker came through my Branding Accelerator program, and he has learned so much. I'm so proud of him. He's got this name.com. He's branding things. He's got video. He's got a book trailer. He's soon going to have an Amazon page. He got the book actually published. I mean, doing the things. But one of the things that when someone like Dr. David is multi-passionate, meaning that he was a teacher, he was a preacher, he was an athlete, he was a referee for 25
years.
25 years, right? He loves sports. So he loves sports, all sports, and he has a podcast, and he has like a knack for really pulling together a lot of people and just really overall wanting to improve people's lives. So it was just really trying to kind of difficult to figure out what his brand was going to be. But I always told him, I said, your first book is really going to settle who you are and what you're about. And then that's why The Champion's Mind, because it talks about how to defeat giants and win. And everybody has those kind of things where feel like they're like David and Goliath. They're going up against some giants, right? It's like, oh my God, how do I do that? And then the resilience that it takes. This right here, I just want to say, Dr. David, remind me of Michigan State Sparty, right?
The Spartans. and actually, that's exactly what that is. It's a kind of a Spartan helmet, but it's protecting the mind.
Right,
Was the whole thing. Yeah.
So this is an MSU home. So I just look and say, oh, there we go. There's a Sparty. But the thing of it is that your story is woven in with the biblical principles, because you actually, minister, pastor as well. And then it's woven into with the sports. So it's one of those things where it took all of your passions and everything that you're about. The only thing I don't think it really has in here is that David was also a psalmist. So do you sing? I never asked you that.
No, if you ask my family, they'll answer that for you. No.
Okay, because I was thinking, I said that was the one part that I didn't ask about, that part. So give us the whole story about the book, and even give us a little bit of the backstory of what we were going to call it before it became The Champion's Mind.
Yeah, originally the book was going to be called The King Mentality, and but it wasn't ringing well across the board. It was sort of isolating the message, and especially in terms of who I was going to reach. And I wanted to be broad and to reach as more than what that original title would have allowed me to do. And I'm very glad that we changed the title, because talking about the champion's mind really is something for everyone, because everyone wants to be a champion.
Everybody wants to be a winner.
Everybody wants to be a winner. And here's the amazing thing is that there are some people, like in sports, if their team doesn't win, and so there are some cities and sports teams that haven't won in years, they're really depressed because they're wondering, when are we going to have our day?
Mhm,
So
mhm.
everyone wants to be a winner and everyone wants to be a champion. And so as I began to write this book, and of course, if I can give you a little bit of the background,
Yeah, yeah.
um, you know, when I in March of 1960, there were no sonograms or gender reveal parties. My parents didn't know my gender, but they had determined that my name was going to be Michael. They had already said it, told all their friends. If we have another boy, I have an older brother, Robert, we're going to name him Michael. But my mother comes to my grandmother, my loving grandmother. Her name is Martha Culbreth. And she comes to her and she says, "Ma, if we have another son, we've already decided his name is going to be Michael." When my grandmother hears this news, she turns to my mother and she looks her right in the eye and she says, "His
His name
name
go
is David."
David. Mhm.
And then she says, "Because David was a king, David killed Goliath, and David was a great man, and my grandson will be named David, and he will be a great man." I love telling that story because what it tells me is that my grandmother was talking to God about me before I got here. She
Mhm.
didn't know well, actually, between her and God, they had already settled it. I was going to be a boy, and his name is going to be David. And
Mhm.
so I have lived my life, embodying this biblical character because of the name David. Everywhere I would go, David, King David, it was always this biblical reference. So one time I said, well, I want to look at David. So I went into the Bible and I was reading about him. And we all know that he's a giant slayer. But then I discovered that he was more than just a giant slayer. What he really was a winner and a champion at everything that he did.
Mhm.
And so I
That's
said,
the Bathsheba.
yeah, well, I'll get to that part. I'll get to that part.
I know a little bit about the Bible.
Yeah. She's in there. And then I got a revelation about that Bathsheba story too. But so he
David
was,
liked the ladies.
huh?
David liked the ladies.
Yeah. And so since you brought up the Bathsheba, and we probably won't have a whole lot of time to talk about it. When I say that David was a champion at everything he did, and you brought up Bathsheba, in that case, even and that's the case when being a champion, when winning at everything goes bad. That's the way I said, because sometimes you can conquer things that you're not supposed to conquer because your mindset.
Mhm.
I'm just a winner, so I'm just going to do whatever I want to do. But sometimes it can be a bad thing, and that's the whole Bathsheba story.
I like that. That's true because that
Yeah,
was
yeah,
really
yeah.
what David felt like, that he was, a king and he could do whatever,
Whatever. Exactly.
and that was just, like, a little bit out of bounds on
Out.
that one,
Right.
and he did pay for it, so at a certain point in time, but that's where people always say about David, he was a man after God's own heart because he felt real repentance about that, and he wrote most of the Psalms and all
Yes.
of that, so,
Yeah.
we kinda get that he was very prolific writer
Yes, he was.
as well, which
Hmm.
what you like to do as well. So one of the things about this is that when we talk about the champion's mind, it's not just men or women, because men like to be champions and women too would like to win as
Absolutely.
well. And so
Absolutely.
this period of time, it came out just this year. And the pandemic, people had 2 years of that, and people were just feeling like, what in the world? So you had probably, how long have you been writing this book?
Well, I would say in total, definitely a year and a half to two.
Okay,
From
before
from
COVID though.
Yeah, but COVID,
Mhm,
got in the way of a lot of things. And again, we talked about the name change and
mhm,
really trying to bring it out. And anyone who has written a book, sometimes you have ideas and thoughts in your mind, but then when you hand them over to the publisher, they get a whole axe, to a lot of things. And not so much as that they take away what you wrote, but sometimes our thoughts are not adequate or appropriate for publication.
mhm.
So
For the marketing part of
for
it,
right for the right for the
marketing
for
part
the
of it.
right.
I
So
mean, we could write anything, and I always say we could write anything, but if you just wanna write it and don't sell it, that's a journal, but if you wanna write
absolutely.
it and
And
sell it, then that's
yeah,
when it's really like the whole marketing part of it, but
and
if you
editing.
yeah, if you had did the book when you thought it should have been out. It would have been different because the timing of this book is really good for right now. Because I really
Absolutely.
think people are going through a lot of things, and their mindset is the main thing that's being attacked. And that's why I like
Absolutely.
this little helmet up here, where it's like, you got to get the mindset right. You got to protect your mind. That's really what
Protect your
it means.
mind.
You got to protect your mind and having the champion's mindset. And so I like the fact that you have endorsements on the book as
Hmm.
well. It can get it on Amazon. So those who are streaming on Amazon can get it here. Dr. George C. Fraser, one of my mentors, the founder of the Power Networking Conference and author of Success Runs in Our Race. So obviously
Hmm.
that's one of the things he gave an endorsement. You have you have a professor here from the New School of Theology, Dale Irving.
Hmm.
And also, too, you have the Center for Micro Entrepreneurial Training. You have Joseph Simmons, and then you have Andy. Can't
Enriquez.
Yes, I always have problem pronouncing his name. I'm sorry, Andy, but he is a CEO of the Master Storytellers. So you have all these different people that are authors, entrepreneurs and people that are speakers and storytellers. And that really kind of combines like who the book is for, right? It's for those
Yes.
type of people. I always say there's not a book there's not a book for everybody other than the Bible, but this one has a particular niche. And by looking at some of the endorsements that you have for it, you can tell like, George Fraser endorsed this book, then I'm going to love this book too as well.
Absolutely.
Because he doesn't endorse everybody's book. And I love the action steps, Dr. David. So that's one of the things too. It's not just a book that talks about your story or about the biblical character of David, but it's like how to apply it, which is like the best part of it. So it gives you the action steps, like number one, you know, here are some specific actions you can take to become aware of God's presence. So one is to meditate, and you give some because a lot of people, how do you meditate? You talk about how to breathe. That's always really one of the main things. You explain that, and talking about inhaling God's peace, reading the Bible, and then
Hmm.
you really just talk about how you experience His presence. You read and meditate on the Word, and then the last one, just having a conversation with God.
Simple talk.
Simple talk, and
Simple
that's
talk.
it's hard. I always tell people, I said the hardest thing is to make something simple.
Hmm.
It really is, and
That's
that's
right.
why I love the book because it is very simple, but it's very rich, very, very
Absolutely.
rich. And you give some examples of some champions. One I saw in there was Nelson Mandela, but name some other ones as well.
Nelson Mandela is in the book, and I'm just trying to. Who else did I use in there? They were under the category of character.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
Let me see. I got here. Wilma Rudolph. You
Oh,
know,
yes, yes.
remember?
That's when I said, "Are you sure you wanna call it about the king?" I said, "'Cause you got some women in here, so,
Yeah, yeah. Uh
and
huh.
that was one, and I
Wilma.
Kobe was in here, right?
Well, yeah. I used a quote by Kobe.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I use a quote by Kobe where he said something about I think it was under chapter 2. Yeah, fearless. In chapter 2, I titled that "Be Fearless." Kobe said, "The moment you give up is the moment you let someone else win."
I love that. I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah,
So tell us about your love for sports and this podcast and how you bring all of this under your speaking realm, I guess you would say, because now if someone wants someone who talks about sports leadership or they want someone to talk about how do we blend it all together? So I love how you've done it, how you spun it.
yeah. Sports has been my passion, no doubt. I grew up in Bedford Stuyvesant in Brooklyn, New York, and I love sports. I love playing it, and sports has helped me to become the leader that I am.
Mhm.
I say most people uh, uh, passively watch sports for entertainment, but sports actively turned me into an effective leader.
Hmm.
Everything that I have learned about leadership, I learned it through sports. I
And you
learned.
Yeah, you were a baseball well, you won a scholarship for baseball.
I was a baseball player,
Mhm.
had an opportunity to get a tryout for the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Yeah.
And in my final 3 weeks of my college career, I broke my leg in the game, and I never made the tryout. Never made the tryout. But I oftentimes, when I tell my story,
But
uh,
it's about this book. So
yeah, yeah,
even though how to defeat the giants and win, even though
exactly.
you can do that. Mhm.
Exact, and that's what that was. That was a particular giant, and all obstacles are giants. But the question is, how are you going to overcome them? How are you going to overcome the setback, the obstacles, the challenges that come in your life? Here's how you do it. You got to get up, dust yourself off, and keep going forward. That's how you do it. It sounds simple, but through drive, dedication, and determination, you
That's
can
it.
turn any and every situation around. So you
Drive.
don't let whatever happens to you today keep you from finding what's next for you tomorrow.
I love that. And that was so easy. You could have sat and just wallowed in pity and just, but what did you end up doing? You end up going to school.
I ended up going to school, and I was finishing school. I ended up making a commitment to come back and finish my degree. It took me another year or so,
Mhm.
So I finished my degree. I earned my bachelor's, and I went into education. I became a teacher for a number of years. Then I went to administration. I went back and got my master's for that. I was a principal. I worked at the superintendent's level, and then ultimately I went and earned my doctorate.
Wow.
So I'm very proud of those things, and I didn't allow the setbacks of life to keep me from not finding new opportunities and new discoveries.
And then during that period of time, you were being a referee. You were
Yeah.
also you had started a church,
Oh, yeah.
right?
I multitasked for about 30 years or so. I I was bivocational because yes, as I said, I gave you my history as an educator, but yes, I was a pastor. I pastored for about 15 years on Long Island, New York, and then I was an NCAA Division I basketball referee.
Mhm.
And I did that again. And as you said something earlier about how I intertwine and brought all those things even into that book. And that's how I live my life. I live my life living out everything that I've done. So
Mhm.
I'm a former pastor, former educator, former sports referee, and I pull all them together, and that's how I live my life today.
And a podcaster. And the
And a
podcast is called
podcast,
right, because
yes.
I was like, it was a leading question to get you to say the name of the
Yeah,
podcast.
right. So and I have a podcast. It's called Beyond the Culture, and Beyond the Culture, embracing change through sports.
I
And
love that.
yeah, and we talk with people in the sports community who obviously have a background in sports, but they're doing other things to impact the community and
Right.
changing lives through whatever they do. Whether some people may be still playing, some people may be coaching, but then some people have second careers, but they're still impacting people, maybe in sports or maybe in business. But I'm always talking to that person in sports because, again, I believe that sports always brings out the greatest leaders.
Leader. Yeah, and that's it, that you really talk about sports leadership, and that's really the
Sports
main thing
leadership.
that when people so do you speak to a lot of, schools or colleges and universities, seminaries? Where are you mostly, like, being booked to speak or eyeing to speak in 2023?
Yeah. Well, right now, mainly in some of it is in the academic sphere with schools.
Yep, yep.
About a month ago, I did a keynote for a school district in Long Island. I was the keynote speaker
Perfect.
at their Superintendent's Day conference. Uh, about
Okay.
about 400 people in the auditorium, and they
Wow.
flew me in from,
That
huh?
had to be like a full circle moment for
Oh
you.
yeah, yeah, and they flew me all the way from Orlando, Florida, to New York to give a talk, and I loved it.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
Colleges, we're working with colleges, and we're
Yes,
sharing stories. Even churches. I mean, obviously, based on my background, I do go to
yeah.
churches and speak. I still minister. This past Sunday, I got an opportunity to actually get into the pulpit and preach again. I was a
Oh
visiting,
my god.
yeah, a visiting pastor down here in Florida. So God is good. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. So you're doing the Dr. David M. Walker, and it speaks, Dr. David Walker speaks, that's one
Right.
of the things that you do, and it's really easy for you. So one of the things that you have done a lot of training and that sort of thing. You love school, obviously you do because you all the way up to the PhD level, right? So
Yes.
but I always say those that are the best teachers also are learners. So what are some of the things that I guess you would say that have impacted you in terms of this process of doing this book? Because it was a whole new thing. You had to know a new language and do it's a whole new thing, right? Like just getting it published. So what have you learned about yourself doing this? Would you you have another one like, oh, that was easy. I got another one I'm coming out, busting out in the next couple of weeks. Or is it like, woo, let me just sit with this for a while. Let this be my signature book, my signature conference, my signature workshop, my signature. It's like I'm gonna work this book. For some people, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's like, what's next? What's next?
Yeah. Well, I do believe that I have within me more books. I don't think that this is only going to be my only book. I'm thinking about doing what I'm calling the Champion's Mind Leadership Development Series,
Ooh, I like that. Okay.
A-
Okay.
and I'm going
It
to
sounds like
step
a
in.
conference too.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to step into a few areas, a few genres like, diversity and inclusion is one, maybe corporate leadership, education, but the champion's mind is going to be the umbrella.
Mhm, mhm. I
So
like
and I'm going to base it off of that book. And if the Lord says the same, as we used to say in the church, but that's what's in my heart. Matter of fact, I even got a vision board up there where I've written everything down. With in terms, again, like sports edition, championships mine, black one for black men, the black men edition, because I want to
mhm,
speak to black men.
mhm.
So yeah, so I'm seeing it as an umbrella, the championships mine, leadership series, leadership development training, something like that.
I love that. I love that. So one of the things too, you have George Fraser down here as one of your endorsers. So I can see you at the PNC, the Power Networking Conference, next year in 2023 in Houston. That's where
Yes,
he's been having it. He just did a call for speakers too, not too long ago, and he's looking for speakers, and they have like a conference. So I could see this being part of that because it is part of what he talks about: success running in your race, having a championship mind, all that kind of stuff.
absolutely.
So yeah, I definitely get to see that. The other thing too, I like where you're talking about communication, and so Andy was one of the ones, and you talked about finding your voice.
Mm,
And I love that part because so many people see people like Dr. George, he's got his own voice, or they may see me and they say, oh, well, she has her own voice. But it's like, but how does someone, if you're learning from other people, how do you not sound like that other person? Like if I were trained by Lisa Nichols, how not to sound like Lisa Nichols, yes, yes, what if I
yeah,
start saying that? It's like, that's not even Pam. Like, yes, yes, that's Lisa's thing. So
right.
how did you find your voice, and how do you teach others or train others to find their voice?
Finding your voice is very, very important. And I talk about that in the book. I think I use Maya Angelou as the one in there. And the story that I tell there was that, she was assaulted as a young girl. And for 5 years, she never spoke a word
Not a word.
from the age of 8 to 13. And but during that time, she developed a love for poetry. And but she would see all the other children talking, and she says, one day I'm going to do it. And finally, at 13, she broke out of her silence, and she found her voice, and her voice was um, in um, in poetry. So
Mhm.
so finding your voice is really um, allowing your story to come forth. See, you said something very powerful when you said Lisa Nichols. You said something about that she has a voice pattern, or the yes, yes, or saying pattern.
Mhm.
That's not finding your voice. Finding your voice is really being able to tell your story. That's your voice. It's not necessarily a particular cadence or sound, but your voice is your story, because
Your
yeah,
brand. Mhm.
that is the only a story that's going to have impact in the lives of other people from you, is your story and
Mhm.
your voice. And
Mhm.
so, and then sometimes, unfortunately, sometimes we discover our voice through tragedy,
Yeah,
you know,
that's true.
but I have when I do my talks, the third point of my talk is called maintain your advantage.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I what I say about maintain your advantage is your life experience is your advantage in life. What does that mean? Whatever it is that you have been through is your advantage. It's what you need to use to find your voice, to tell your story, to change other people's lives.
Mhm.
And sometimes, like I said, in Maya's case, it was tragic. Oprah talks about a similar assault, or sometimes some people may come from their father wasn't around, or they may come from poverty, or they may be of a particular ethnic minority. Sometimes as Black people, we say, well, we don't, they're not going to give us a chance for we're Black. I say, whoever you are, whatever you are,
Use it as
whatever your
advantage.
life is, that is your advantage. Stop looking for someone else's story to tell.
Mhm.
Tell yours. That's
Mhm.
your advantage in life, no matter whatever it is, because you cannot change your story, but you can tell it.
I love that. And it is. It's something that you will just have that'll resonate so deeply in you. You'll tell it over and over again. And I look at Les Brown. Les Brown tells a lot of the same stories because he's the only one that happened to,
That's
and
right.
the way that it did. So he has his twin brother, his Mamie Brown's son, and all of those things, right? And it's just part of his story, and it is part of your brand as well. So we're kind of wrapping up a little bit. So if people were to follow you on social media, what are the kind of things that you're sharing out in terms of your content?
Well, mostly I'm trying to get people to see how they could be champions in life.
Hmm.
Everything that I do, I talk about being a champion, overcoming.
Yes.
I talk about being yourself, being your authentic self. That's how you win. Stop being other people. Stop being someone else.
Hmm.
Be yourself. You will win by being you. No one can be a better you than you.
That's it. That is
There's a lot of great people in the world, and I'll say some names: George Frazier, T.D. Jakes, name them.
hmm
On their best day, they could never be a better me than I can be. You know what I'm saying?
right.
So I don't worry about them. I'm just going to be myself. So I tell people, you can be a champion, you can be a winner, but you will do it best by living your authentic self.
I love it. And the thing of it is too, it makes me think of Dr. Stacey NC Grant. She's always at Dr. Frazier's event. So I definitely want to see you at her event. And I'm putting it out there, Dr. Stacey NC Grant, that
Okay.
Dr. David should be a part of the lineup for when she does her Faithpreneur conference in Queens.
Oh,
Not too far from maybe Long Island, I don't think, or
that's
where.
that's my home, Queens.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So that's where she is. And she's talk about using everything. She's from Queens. Her grandmother is from Jamaica, Kingston, Jamaica. She loves to speak. She's a teacher as well. She's got a teaching gift as well. But some of the things that you're saying just kind of resonates a lot with what she says about being her authentic self. Now, Faithpreneur, she's loves the Lord, and so
Mhm.
she still goes and teaches and trains in corporate America. But she lets them know that, hey, my faith is important to me. I mean, she didn't go in there hitting him over the head with a Bible or anything, but it is just part of who she is, and she's successful at it. The same thing with you. Everything that you have, you're successful with it because you're authentically you. It is your voice. And people
Absolutely.
are paying for your voice. They want to hear your voice. They didn't call you in to hear somebody else's voice or somebody else's story.
Exactly.
So that's why I was saying that the two of you. And one of the things, she just became the president of the Zetas. It's a national sorority
Sure.
that she just became that. That's why all the blue and that kind of thing. So I just see, she just texted me just now, was like, I'm going to make sure that she gets a copy of this book
Okay.
and reads it and have you as part of her conference that she does every year. I think it's her 5th year next year, doing her 5th year
Absolutely.
next year. So that will be really, really good. But that's what Speakers is trying to get everybody connected. Black Speakers Network, our friend Brian Oles, all the different people, Dr. Cheryl Wood, she's doing SpeakerCon. All of us are trying to make a big difference and trying to impact and change people's lives for the better, which is
Absolutely.
really your mission. That's what your grandmother saw you do, right? It's like
That's right.
change a lot of people's lives. It's like, okay, so, and you surround yourself with people that are helping you to do that. So I just
Amen.
really, really appreciate that. And more people, we can find out more about you too, making sure that they go here, go to Dr. Create a banner here. Go to drdavidmwalker.com. Let me put it up here. Create banner. It's doing the ticker, but for those of you who can't see it, but it is his name, drdavidmwalker.com. So with that, Dr. David, thank you so much for joining Speakers Magazine Show. You've been featured in our issue a couple of times, and hopefully see you in 2023 as well, because before we were talking about the book was coming out, so we did
That's
not
right.
We did not
Yeah.
have the book cover and that in there as well, so
Yeah.
definitely have that, but I
But
wanna see you
be
next year at a couple of the events.
absolutely, and before we go, anyone that purchased the book on Amazon, or you can go directly to my website at drdavidmwalker.com. And if you go to my website, I developed, Pam, this companion study guide that,
Ah,
yeah, that they can get for free on the website.
okay.
And those action steps that you talked about at the end of each chapter,
Yes, yes, I love those.
the study guide, the companion study guide, is something that they can use to help them to answer those questions, because it's
Ah,
got the lines and you can
it's
write
like
everything out.
yeah,
It's like it's
like your
like a
work.
workbook. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. So if
Yes.
they get it on Amazon, then come back to
They
davidmwalker.com,
right.
they can actually download
Right.
the
But if they come to my website to buy the book, I will autograph the copy. So you'll get an autographed copy from me that I'll send to you, and then you can download the free companion study guide on my website.
I love that, I love it. So one of the things, this is the last thing I'm gonna say, because I just love you, and I just always have all kind of ideas for you because you're just so creative. You gotta speak at Michigan State, like,
Okay.
really? Like, you gotta figure out what part, with basketball team, somebody, but with this helmet on here, they gonna already love you. You could've did a green, but it's okay, we can go with the blue.
All right. I'd love to talk to Coach Tom Izzo.
Yes, yes. That's it. That's it. So I
Okay.
kind of see that in your future as well. So you'll be coming back to Michigan again.
Wonderful.
So yes, yes, yes. So well, that is good. That is good. But yeah, I see some things for you that are really just opening up for you in 2023. And I just want to say I'm very, very proud of you. People go to David M. Walker. They can go there, watch the trailer, get the workbook, book them to speak, all the things, collaborations. Those are some of the things as well. And I have been okay, some of our comments over here. I'm not gonna post those comments, but anyway, uh,
I hope they're nice. I hope they're nice.
I will. It's depending on who you are. I don't know. So, but thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. David, and I will
Sure.
talk with you soon. God
Thank,
bless you. All
take
righty, take
all
care.
right. Take
Bye
care, Pam. Bye
bye.
bye.
Bye. So that is drdavidmwalker.com. We were streaming over here at Amazon. Make sure that you get the book. You can get the book over at Amazon as well. You can see this here. And then also, too, he's been featured in Speakers Magazine as well. Go to speakersmagazine.com, look, type in his name, and you'll see all his pages pop up over there as well. So with that, I am Pam Perry, and I'm out. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.